The razor-thin race for Ohio's Senate seat is now the most expensive congressional contest in U.S. history. According to Ad Impact, the price tag of the race between Democrat incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown and Trump-backed Republican challenger Bernie Moreno now has surpassed more than $400 million. The race could decide which party controls the Senate next year. Polls showing a very close matchup right now, with Senator Brown defying Republican trends in the state again with a small lead, but within the margin of error. And Senator Brown joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for your time this morning. So much to get to you about, but let's just pick up the conversation there. You live in and represent a manufacturing state. What would the kind of tariffs that Donald Trump is talking about do to workers and to companies in Ohio?
Well, it's not surprising, I always look at this through the eyes of Ohio workers. I was just this week in Lordstown, a company in a town that lost a lot of auto jobs. We're fighting back. We've worked together in a way that there are now several hundred jobs there with potential for growth. So to me, it's taking on, when I was at Lordstown, I was at the UAW Hall, it's taking on those companies that outsource jobs, that push through bad trade agreements. It's taking on the drug companies. I don't see politics as left or right. I see it as whose side you on. That's why they're spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars against me. When you take on the drug companies, when you take on Wall Street, when you take on these companies that outsource jobs, they come after you. And I knew they would. The hundreds of millions of dollars. We're going to win in spite of that. I ask people to come to SherrodBrown.com. They've got their billionaires. I've got 12 million people in Ohio I fight for. I'll continue to make that fight. And that's why I ask people in this show to help.
Senator, Ohio, though not a battleground in the presidential race, has certainly been at the forefront of the national consciousness politically in recent weeks. J.D. Vance, your Senate colleague from your state, of course, made these false claims about Springfield, Ohio, what he said there about migrants eating pets. And then yesterday, as we spent a lot of time on this morning, flat out said that he does not think that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. Can we get your reaction, sir, to your Senate colleague and just what that says about the Republican Party today?
Sure. I didn't, J.D. Vance, it's a little bit like an arranged marriage. J.D. Vance didn't choose me, and I sure as hell didn't choose him. But my job is to represent people in Ohio and keep my focus on Ohio workers. In the last week, as I mentioned, I've been to Lordstown. I was in Chillicothe, where they've tried to close a veterans hospital, and I work with Jessica Fee and AFSCME and Mayor Luke Feeney and others to keep that hospital open. I've been in, I talked to firefighters in Cleveland, where they endorsed me, and because I've stood with them and their pensions and other ways. So my focus will always be in Ohio. National media wants to talk about national races. I'm fine with that. But I represent 12 million people in Ohio. I'll continue to fight for them. That's my job. That's why they hire me. And again, the voters of Ohio, they know the way I do this. I don't get the ideas. The best ideas don't come from Washington. I heard about a pension bill from workers in Youngstown and Dayton. I went back. We restored the pensions of 100,000 Ohio workers. I heard it from Susan Zier in Sandusky, heard about these football field-sized burn pits. I went back, worked with John Tester and others. 40,000 Ohioans have already gotten care because of that exposure. The bill's named after an Ohioan, just like the pension bill is. So you get the ideas at home, you go back to Washington, you find a partner, and you push this through, and then you make sure it's implemented. I've done probably 50 roundtables with veterans around the state, from Defiance to Toledo to Ravenna, and talk to them about how do we get the word out that these pensions that this help is available because of their exposure to these football field-sized burn pits. So it really is getting things done, focusing on my state, showing whose side I'm on, and then I make that contrast. I fight for the dignity of work. Bernie Moreno literally stiffed workers out of his own workers out of $400,000 by taking their overtime. He had to pay it back, and I mean, you can see I'm on the side of Ohioans, and Bernie Moreno looks out for himself and his rich friends, and that's the contrast in this race. That's what will win this race when we make that contrast.
So, good morning, Sharon. I want
Hey,
to
Claire.
take a big flashing red light and explain to everybody in America that Sherrod Brown's race in Ohio is exactly what has happened to our elections in the United States since Citizens United. And the fact that we have an FEC that is asleep on the job. Billionaires are stroking checks with dark money to beat Sherrod Brown. $40 million pouring in just over the last few days from billionaires that don't like it, that he is running the banking committee thinking about Ohioans instead of big guys in fancy cars in the executive suite. He's thinking about the people who want to have banking be fair to them, not to the people that can stroke $100 million, $40 million, $20 million checks. And that's what they're doing in Ohio to Sherrod Brown. The money, he has raised money by and large. Yes, there's been some big checks that have been written because you can't unilaterally disarm. But most of his money that he is spending, his campaign, has come from folks who've given $20 or $100 or $75. That's what's going on in Ohio right now. So, Sharon, tell us how you overcome this amount of money being these huge checks being written behind the curtain. I always said that if people in Missouri knew who were writing those big checks that nobody knows where they come from, they'd be very proud of the enemies I've made. I think the same can be said for you. You've made some enemies because you are on the side of Ohio's workers. What is your path now in front of this huge amount of money that's pouring in against you?
Thank you, Claire, for that question. I know you were up against that 6 years ago because that's how campaigns have evolved, unfortunately. I think as you were asking that question, Claire, I thought back. One of the things I noticed years ago as I was talking to veterans groups and others is how right outside of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and this has a lot to do with the committee I chair, you saw all these payday lenders and other kind of vultures right outside the military base. They can't come on the base under federal law, but they'd set up right outside it, and they would try to fleece young men and women who went straight into the military after high school and maybe don't have a lot of financial sophistication. And that's that. My job is to protect them. My job is to protect people when Wall Street or the drug companies or the oil companies or the companies that outsource jobs, when they go after people in Ohio. And my job is to stand with them and to protect them. And when they're spending billions of dollars, and as you say, Claire, we're raising more than half the money as we fight back. We're raising more than half the money from individual contributions. That's why, again, I ask people to come to SherrodBrown.com and contribute $15 or $20. But it really is whose side are you on? And I really don't buy the left or right analysis that many pundits and many politicians like to form politics and think about politics. It really is whose side you're on. So I get votes from people, whether they're Republicans or independents or Democrats. I get votes from a lot of people because I stand for them. And I also make the contrast with my opponent, because politics is always contrast. Ohio, as you know, Claire, passed with 57% of the vote abortion rights constitutional amendment last November. My opponent says he's for a national abortion ban. I'm 100% pro-life, no exceptions. And that contrast, the arrogance of that, the Bernie Moreno thinks he knows better than the 57%. I talk to a lot of men and women and men about that and make that contrast. Bernie Moreno, as you know, Claire, because you follow this so closely, was wondering, he was talking to you, Claire. He said, I think you're over 50, yeah. Claire. And he said, why would women over 50 care about abortion? I mean, he sort of made fun of Ohioans overall for passing 57% and particularly insulted women over 50. And that's what we see too much of.
Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, thank you very much for coming on this morning. And